final speaker coming up now is Lisa Hutchinson. Lisa is an experienced editor of medical science journals, 17 years experience in academic publishing, mostly in oncology. Lisa graduated in biochemistry at University College London. In 2000, she completed her PhD at the Institute of Cancer Research at Royal Marsden. Her first editorial position was with the journal Breast Cancer Research, and in 2004 she was appointed as chief editor of Nature Reviews Clinical Oncology, quite prestigious, and she nurtured that to become the leading review journal in that field. And since 2018, she's been working freelance as an editor, writer, and consultant. Please welcome Lisa Hutchinson.
Thank you very much, Neil, for that lovely introduction. And we're standing together here today. So thank you for waiting this long for the last speaker. I actually think that what we're really doing is going to be connecting the dots. Perhaps my talk will do that. Or another way of saying it is actually connecting the nonsense, because I think we've had a lot of nonsense for at least 4 years, or a lot longer actually. So that brief introduction gave you an insight into my background. So yes, indeed, I've got a PhD in cancer, in cancer research from the Royal Marsden, and about 17 years of publication, academic publishing background and experience. And I actually wrote an article in the Light paper a couple of years or so ago called Open Access Publishing, a Corrupt Agenda. I thought, as I've got 10, 15 minutes to chat to you, I'll just spend 5 minutes briefly going through some of the issues with academic publishing. So when I was working as an editor on that journal, I started to become very perturbed and disturbed by the fact that there was a lot of censorship, there was corruption, there's huge conflicts of interest among doctors and among clinicians and scientists, and about the sort of collusion that was going on. But you have to realise that this is a very well-oiled machine, and it's the funding of research that's very heavily linked and connected also to which research is allowed to even get money and get funded, how that research is carried out, and where it gets published. So in 2010, there was a bit of a change in academic publishing. 90% of all articles were published in subscription model journals. In other words, the reader paid for the content. But then a change happened in 2009-10. Okay, not long after the financial crash, of course, in 2008. Probably not a coincidence. And our sort of heads of our company were telling us that there was a movement that the public were very disgruntled. They couldn't, it's the taxpayers' money that funds academic research, but they aren't being able to read the content that's published in high-profile journals like Lancet New England, British Medical Journal, all the others. So there's going to be a movement to go to something called open access. So open access with the sort of so-called transparency and, for the better good version, like we've seen with things like smart meters and climate change in the publication field. But I started to always question to myself, well, how are they funding this? And so if you can't pay as a reader, how are they monetizing open access if it's free at the source, at the point of use for the reader? So they've introduced something called APC, article processing charges. And those were going to be paid for by the funders, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, medical research councils, lots of private as well as federally funded organisations, Johns Hopkins, Imperial College, all of these organisations that were heavily involved, of course, in the censorship of some therapies that we know work well, and they also conspired to basically bring down all of the vaccine injury data, and all of that was censors. You might think, well, how did this all happen in 2020? Well, it's been going on for at least 10 years, because open access is a corrupt agenda. What they're doing is they're allowing scientists who get funded by Bill Gates to only publish in the journals he approves of or he wants you to publish in. So it's a clever little ruse, and even the scientists involved here don't realise what's right under their own noses. So basically, if you were paying for a subscription to a medical journal in 2009, you might pay £100 a year. And that's for all 12 issues, all right? So you'd get the whole content. Instead, the funders of all medical research, remember, this is taxpayer funded, it's your money. It's not from the higher echelons of the Bill Gates world, it's us. You're now paying anywhere between £1,500 to £10,000 per article, not for a whole year's subscription. And guess who gets to control what gets published? Bill and Melinda Gates and Wellcome Trust, Jeremy Farrar, who's recently joined the World Health Organization. You're beginning to see a little pattern here, connecting the dots, how we've managed to corrupt academic publishing for at least 15 years or more. And that's because they were threatening scientists. They've been doing this. They've actually done in 2021, they've told all scientists that anyone who's funded, publicly funded, has to publish in an open access journal, or they won't get their tenure, or they won't get their sort of funding recirculated again. In other words, they'll lose their careers. And the other thing that the pharma industry does, and it's very clever, they've been doing this for decades, is that they make or break a scientist's career. Only the scientists who go with the official narrative and do the research that's funded for by these organisations, only their voice gets heard. Everyone else's voice is lower down. And there's another corruption that goes on in funding as well. So what happens is, you would think, wouldn't you, that when you do a grant, you get funded for 3 years for your research, you do the work, and then it gets published. But does that actually really happen? No, 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 no. What you do is, you basically apply for grant funding. You've already done a lot of research. You keep that research quiet. You then apply for money and use that money to do something else and then get that published. So there's a corruption going on even within funding in the science community. And this is happening all over the place in the top research institutes. I know, because I've been in touch with the authors of a lot of these studies. And we heard, of course, from Angus Dalgleish earlier today. All of this publication corruption has been brought in as a construct over 10, 15 years ago to enable the nonsense we've been seeing with COVID in the last 4 years. So they did it very quietly, under the surface, very surreptitiously. And I'd realised something's going on here. Why would funders pay £10,000 for one article in a journal when that money was originally spread around hundreds or thousands of readers, only paying £100 each? It didn't make sense. But how do you control the narrative? If you do it at the source end, if you do it when the articles get submitted to the journals and you're funding those publishers of the journals, now it starts to make sense. Springer Nature, the former publisher I worked for, along with other publishers, Wiley, Elsevier, that publishes Lancet, guess who they're connected to? Guess who their shareholders are? Board of directors. Guess what? They're all connected to the World Economic Forum. No surprise, no coincidence. And what we've witnessed in the last few years is censorship, corruption, coercion. We've seen lots of words beginning with C, haven't we? COVID and many others. So I've also, in the last year and a half, become involved in some of the work that ASIF's doing and the action against 5G and I'm involved in 5G calls. We actually did an event 2 or 3 days ago in London at the Manual Centre, and it was called Society, Controlled or Free, ? It's up to us. And we actually had a sneak preview of Mark Sharman's film that was alluded to earlier, that Nikki's participant in. And he showed us a 15-minute clip. Basically, we're all heading towards a digital prison. And what they're doing is using our own data against us. We're in a digital demonization warfare. Sad situation. It's horrifying to listen to the previous poor speaker, Nikki, and the way in which these people have been ostracized. It's bad enough to be injured by these terrible, ridiculous experimental therapies with no safety data. Similarly, 5G masks going up all over the place, millions of them. No safety data recognition, as we've heard from ASIF. So part of me reasoning for mentioning this event actually is that it's sponsored by an organisation, non-profit organisation called ACHES. Adult Child Health and Environmental Support is what ACHES stands for. And they are getting together, along with Ian Jarvis from Wolverhampton, Asif from 5G, many other people. And we're starting to unleash and uncover this corruption that's happening. For example, the 5G masks that have been given safety certificates, IGNA safety certificates, under the so-called companies that do not exist and was dissolved in 2015 that we heard about. So we've uncovered that corruption. So we're getting grassroots movement that are, having a groundswell. So today, I know it feels like we're preaching to converted and that we've all heard this before, but when we came down here, we went through Purley. There were loads of stop ULEZ, anti-ULEZ, sprayed all over these different places on brick walls, There were people with yellow boards out there. They were saying, stop ULEZ, and we actually quickly wound the window down as I was at the sort of, big roundabout section there, and we were saying, yeah, we're here loads of times. We're starting to see things happening. So again, please do support your Stand in the Park groups. It feels like, sometimes that we're not making a difference. We absolutely are, as Mick said just now. Society controlled or free? That was a question mark. It's not a done deal. The globalists want you to think that it is. It jolly well isn't. We are not going to be controlled by puppets and muppets, psychopaths, who are bloody idiots, who are bloody obscene arseholes, who are taking away our sovereignty and our liberties. So I just wanted to let you know that this corruption is in every industry. It's in the food and farming industry, it's in transport industry, it's in academia, it's in everything. We've seen it, of course, in the media, mainstream media. All of it's connected, but I'm starting to work with Asif and others. I'm going to be writing articles about some of the damage done by non-thermal effects from 5G, and I'm part of those groups. So if you can go onto the AICS International website, the reason I'm plugging this is that they've got 5 template letters. So if you haven't yet objected to any of these 5G masts or any of the LED lights, street lights, you can do so with template letters that they've diligently put together. It's silly to have them, languishing on our website and people aren't using them. If we all contacted our councils and objected to a lot of the infrastructures, these enslavement digital infrastructures that are there completely illegally, we can make a difference. So thank you very much.